The rain didn't just fall that night. It felt like it was trying to erase the city of Seattle from the map. It was a cold, relentless downpour that turned the alleyways into rivers of oil-slicked sludge. Huddled in the shadow of a dumpster, 13-year-old Leo pulled his thin, oversized denim jacket tighter around his shoulders. It did nothing to stop the bone-deep chill. He was shaking, his teeth chattering so hard his jaw ached, but his eyes were fixed on the building across the wet asphalt. It was a fortress of brick and steel, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The sign above the reinforced gate was illuminated by a single flickering floodlight. It read, Iron Guardians MC. To most people, that sign was a warning to stay away. To the polite society of the suburbs, it was a den of criminals and outcasts. But to Leo, watching from the darkness with grease-stained hands and an empty stomach, it looked like the only place left in the world. He heard the roar before he saw the source. A massive Harley-Davidson thundered into the alley, the headlight cutting through the rain like a lighthouse beam. The rider didn't dismount immediately. He sat there, revving the engine, frustration evident in the way he twisted the throttle. The bike was sputtering, coughing, and dying. The rider, a mountain of a man wearing a leather cut with a president patch, cursed loudly, kicking the kickstand down and hopping off. He grabbed a wrench from a saddlebag and started banging on the engine casing, clearly more angry than skilled in that moment. Leo knew he shouldn't move. He knew the smart thing was to stay hidden, wait for the scary biker to leave, and maybe scavenge for food in their trash later. But then the biker threw the wrench on the ground with a clang that echoed off the brick walls. The man put his head in his hands, looking defeated. Leo took a breath that tasted like exhaust fumes and rain. He stepped out from behind the dumpster, his sneakers squelched in the mud. He walked slowly, hands up, looking like a drowned rat approaching a grizzly bear. "It's not the starter," Leo said, his voice cracking. The biker spun around, faster than a man his size should move. His hand went to his belt, eyes narrowing beneath a soaking wet bandana. "Who's there? Get lost, kid, before you regret it." Leo stopped, trembling, but he didn't run. He pointed a shaking finger at the vintage motorcycle. "The bike. It's not the starter. It's the air-fuel mixture screw on the carburetor. It's running too rich because of the humidity. You're flooding it." The giant man, known to the streets as Bear, squinted at the boy. He saw a kid who couldn't be older than 12 or 13, drowning in clothes, 3 sizes too big, with a face smeared in old motor oil and eyes that held a terror deeper than just fear of the dark. Bear picked up his wrench. "And what do you know about tanheads, boy?" "I know enough," Leo whispered, stepping closer. "If I fix it, if I get it running right now, will you let me stay, just for tonight? Please, I just need somewhere dry." Bear looked at the bike, then back at the kid. The sheer audacity of the offer hung in the rain-soaked air. This was the president of the Iron Guardians, and a homeless child was bartering labor for sanctuary. Before we find out if Bear decides to chase the boy off, or take him up on this desperate deal, I have a small favor to ask. If you believe that help sometimes comes from the most unexpected places, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to hit the like button on this video. Leave a comment saying everyone deserves a chance, and if you haven't already, subscribe to Biker Stories and turn on notifications. Your support helps us share more of these powerful stories. Now, let's see if Leo can fix the machine. Bear crossed his massive arms, water dripping from his beard. He didn't smile. He didn't soften. He just gestured to the bike with a nod of his head. "You got 5 minutes, Grease Monkey. If that engine doesn't purr, you're back in the alley. If it does, we'll talk." Leo didn't waste a second. He dropped to his knees in the mud, next to the chrome beast. His small, scarred hands moved with a dexterity that seemed impossible for his age. He didn't need to look for the adjustment screw. His fingers found it by feel. He pulled a small, worn screwdriver from his pocket, his only possession, and carefully turned the screw a quarter turn. Then paused, listening to the rain, then turned it back an eighth. He reached up and adjusted the idle speed, his ear close to the engine block, as if he were listening to a heartbeat. "Try it now," Leo said softly, standing up and wiping his hands on his wet jeans. Bear threw a leg over the bike. He turned the key and hit the starter. The engine didn't sputter. It didn't cough. It roared to life with a deep, rhythmic thrum that sounded like thunder trapped in a bottle. It was perfect. Bear killed the engine and sat there in the silence that followed, staring at the boy. The skepticism in his eyes was replaced by genuine shock. He looked at the clubhouse gate, then back at the shivering boy who looked ready to collapse. "What's your name, kid?" Bear asked, his voice a low rumble. "Leo," the boy whispered. Bear sighed, a sound like a tire losing air. He climbed off the bike and walked over to the keypad on the gate. "Well, Leo, a deal is a deal. But I'm telling you now, you break anything in there, you steal anything, or you lie to me, and the deal is off. You got 48 hours. Get your bike inside." Leo didn't have a bike, but he scrambled to follow Bear as the heavy steel gates rolled open. As he crossed the threshold into the Iron Guardian's compound, he felt a strange sensation. It wasn't just the relief of escaping the rain. It was the feeling of crossing a line from the world that had hurt him into a world that might just kill him or save him. He didn't know which yet. Inside, the clubhouse was warm. It smelled of stale beer, leather, and gasoline, a perfume that Leo found comforting. The main room was filled with bikers. Some were playing pool, others were drinking at the bar, and a few were cleaning weapons at a corner table. When Bear walked in with a dripping wet, homeless teenager trailing behind him, the room went dead silent. "Bear," asked a man with a snake tattoo winding up his neck, "what is this?" "We running a daycare now." Kid fixed the panhead. Bear grunted, walking straight to the bar and grabbing a towel. He threw it at Leo, hitting him square in the face. "Dry off. Don't drip on the rug." Bear turned to the room, his authority absolute. "He stays for 48 hours. He's got skills. Doc, check him out. He looks like he's about to pass out from hypothermia. Tiny, get the kid a burger." The man named Tiny, who was ironically the largest man in the room, even bigger than Bear, grinned and headed for the kitchen. Doc, an older biker with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, motioned for Leo to sit on a leather couch. As Leo sat, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a crushing exhaustion. He wrapped the towel around himself, his eyes darting around the room. These men were terrifying. They were covered in tattoos, scars, and patches that screamed violence. But as Tiny returned with a plate piled high with a burger and fries, and Doc gently checked his temperature, Leo realized something confused him. They weren't hitting him. They weren't yelling. They were feeding him. But Leo's story didn't start in that alley. To understand why a 13-year-old mechanical genius was homeless, we have to look back at where he came from. Leo was a ward of the state. His parents had died in a car crash when he was 6, leaving him with nothing but a natural aptitude for machines. For years, he bounced between foster homes, each one worse than the last, until he landed at the Henderson home for boys. Mr. Henderson was a pillar of the community. He was a tall, silver-haired man who owned the biggest auto repair shop in the city, Henderson's Auto World. He was always in the local paper, shaking hands with the mayor, donating to charities, and talking about how he gave troubled youths a second chance by teaching them a trade. The public saw a saint. Leo saw a monster. The Henderson home wasn't a home. It was a labor camp. The garage basement was a sweatshop. Henderson would take in foster kids, specifically targeting the ones with no family to check on them, and force them to work 10, sometimes 12 hours a day, restoring classic cars. These cars sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars at auctions, and Henderson kept every penny. The boys weren't paid. They were barely fed. If a car wasn't finished on time, or if there was a scratch on the paint, Henderson's punishment was swift and brutal. Leo was the best mechanic Henderson had ever had. Because of that, Leo suffered the most. He was given the hardest jobs, the tightest deadlines. 3 days ago, Leo had been welding a frame on a '69 Mustang. Exhausted from lack of sleep, he had slipped, and the torch had scorched a patch of expensive leather upholstery. Henderson hadn't yelled. He had simply smiled. That cold, dead smile locked Leo in the supply closet without food for 2 days, and told him that when he came out he would work off the debt in ways that would make him wish he were dead. That night, Leo picked the lock on the closet door with a paper clip, a trick he'd learned from an older boy, and ran. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran until he found the alley behind the biker club. He knew about the Iron Guardians because Henderson hated them. Henderson always ranted about how the bikers were scum and criminals. Leo figured that if a bad man like Henderson hated them, maybe they weren't so bad after all. Back in the clubhouse, the 48 hours were ticking away. The first night, Leo slept on the couch. It was the best sleep he had had in years. No one woke him up to sand rust off a fender. No one screamed at him. The next morning, the club was alive with activity. Leo woke up to the smell of coffee. He folded his blanket neatly, terrified of making a mess. Bear was already up, sitting at the table reviewing a ledger. "Hungry?" Bear asked without looking up. "Yes, sir," Leo said. "Don't call me sir. Call me Bear." "Go see Tiny in the kitchen." Leo ate 3 eggs, 4 pieces of toast, and bacon. After breakfast, he didn't know what to do. He felt he had to earn his keep. He wandered out to the back lot where the bikes were parked. He saw a younger prospect struggling to change a tire on a touring bike. Without asking, Leo walked over. "You're pinching the tube," he said quietly. The prospect, a guy named Rocco, looked down. "What?" "The tire iron. You're pinching the inner tube. If you force it, it'll pop." Leo knelt down. "Let me show you." Leo's hands flew. He seated the bead, leveraged the tire on, and checked the pressure in under 5 minutes. Rocco stared at him, slack-jawed. By noon, Leo had fixed a faulty brake line on Doc's bike and tuned the carburetor on Snake's chopper. The bikers watched him with a mix of amusement and awe. This scrawny kid was a wizard. He listened to engines like they were whispering secrets to him. Bear watched from the doorway, his arms crossed. He saw how the kid flinched whenever someone moved too fast. He saw the way Leo constantly checked the exits. Bear had seen that look before. It was the look of a hunted animal. Around 2 p.m., Bear called Leo over to the main table. "Sit down, kid." Leo sat, his hands clasped tight in his lap. "Did I do something wrong? I can fix it, I promise." "You didn't do anything wrong," Bear said, his voice softer than usual. "But we need to talk. You clearly ain't just a runaway. You got skills that take years to learn, but you look like you haven't eaten a real meal in months. and you got burn marks on your forearms that looked like welding splatter. Leo instinctively pulled his sleeves down. We don't hurt kids here, Bear said, leaning forward. But I can't help you if I don't know who you're running from. The 48 hours are almost up. If you walk out that gate, you're back on the street. Or you tell me the truth, and maybe the Guardians can extend the deadline. Leo looked at Bear. He looked at the other men in the room who had stopped what they were doing to listen. For the first time in his life, Leo felt a spark of hope, but he was terrified. If he told them, and they sent him back to Henderson, he was dead. Before Leo reveals his secret, I want to ask you a question. If you were in Leo's shoes, scared, alone, and facing a group of intimidating strangers, would you trust them? Or would you keep running? What would you do? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. Leo took a deep breath. His name is Henderson, he whispered. Mr. Henderson. The room went cold. Bear's eyes narrowed. The guy who owns the big shop downtown, the city hero. Leo nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He runs a foster home, but it's not a home. It's a factory. He makes us fix cars. Expensive cars. We work all day and night. If we mess up, he locks us away. He doesn't feed us. He hurts us. Leo rolled up his sleeve, revealing not just the welding burns, but older scars, belt marks, bruises, cigarette burns. The silence in the clubhouse was deafening. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. These men were outlaws. Sure. They sold protection, they brawled. They lived outside the rules, but they had a code. And number one on that code was, you don't hurt children. Tiny slammed his fist onto the table, cracking the wood. I'm going to kill him, he growled. I'm going to ride down there and tear his head off. Sit down, Tiny, Bear barked. The command was absolute. Tiny sat, breathing heavily. Bear looked at Leo. You're telling me Henderson is running a slave shop with foster kids? Yes, Leo said. There are 6 other boys there right now. I ran away 3 days ago. He's going to find me. He knows everyone. The police, the social workers, they all think he's a saint. No one believes us. Bear stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the rain, which had finally stopped. He won't find you here. And as for believing, the Guardians believe you. Bear turned to the club. Snake, get on the computer. I want everything on Henderson. Financials, property records, adoption papers. Doc, you got friends at the city hospital, right? See if any kids from Henderson's home have been admitted with accidental injuries in the last few years. We aren't going to just beat this guy up. If we do that, he plays the victim. We go to jail, and the kids go to another hellhole. We need to bury him. We need to expose him. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. The outlaws transformed into a precise military unit. Snake, the club's intelligence officer, hacked into the city's databases. He found the discrepancies quickly. Henderson was reporting massive expenses for childcare, while his bank account showed huge deposits from private car collectors, money that was never declared as business income. Doc returned with a file. It's bad, Bear. 4 kids from that house in the last 2 years. Broken arms, concussions, severe burns. All listed as clumsy accidents or playground falls. But the frequency is impossible. We got him, Bear said, his face like stone. But we need to get those kids out before we make a move. If he smells heat, He might hurt them to keep them quiet. Just then, the perimeter alarm buzzed. The gate intercom crackled. "This is Arthur Henderson. I believe you have something of mine." The room froze. Leo's face went white. He scrambled behind the bar, curling into a ball. "He found me," he whimpered. "He's going to kill me." Bear signaled for everyone to stay calm. "Open the gate," he said into his radio. "Let him in." "Bear, are you crazy?" Tiny hissed. "Trust me," Bear said. "Rocco, get the camera ready. Stay out of sight. Everyone else, act natural. Leo, stay down. Do not come out until I say so." A sleek black Mercedes rolled into the compound. It looked out of place among the Harleys and the oil stains. Mr. Henderson stepped out. He was wearing a pristine beige trench coat and holding an umbrella, though the rain had stopped. He looked every bit the concerned, wealthy grandfather. He walked toward the clubhouse entrance where Bear was waiting, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Can I help you?" Bear asked, lighting a cigarette. "I certainly hope so," Henderson said, his voice smooth as silk. "I'm looking for a troubled young boy, Leo. He ran away from my care a few days ago. He's mentally unstable. A liar, prone to fits. One of my contacts said they saw a boy matching his description heading this way. I just want to bring him home, get him his medication." Bear took a drag of his cigarette. "Don't know any Leo. Haven't seen any kids. This is a biker club, pal, not a playground." Henderson's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. "Now, see, I think you're lying. And I have friends in the police department who would be very interested to come search this place. I'm sure they'd find all sorts of illegal things. Guns, drugs, stolen parts. It was a threat, plain and simple." Bear laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You threatening me, Henderson?" "I'm a concerned guardian," Henderson said, taking a step closer. "Give me the boy now, and I'll forget I ever saw this place. Keep him, and I bring the hammer down." Bear flicked his cigarette onto the wet pavement. "You know, Henderson, you talk a lot about the law for a guy who forces kids to sandblast paint in an unventilated basement." Henderson's face twitched. The mask slipped for a fraction of a second. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do," Bear said, stepping off the porch to tower over the man. "We know about the cars. We know about the money. We know about the burns on the kids' arms. You have no proof," Henderson sneered, his voice dropping the polite facade. "Who are they going to believe? Me? The businessman of the year? Or a gang of dirty criminals and a lying brat?" "They might believe the video," Bear said, pointing up. Henderson looked up. On the roof of the clubhouse, Rocco was holding a high-definition camera, recording everything. "And," Bear continued, "they might believe the Child Protective Services agents that Doc just called. They're on their way to your house right now with a warrant, based on the medical records we just emailed them." Henderson's face went pale. He turned to his car, but Tiny and Snake had moved behind it, blocking the exit with their bikes. "You can't keep me here," Henderson screamed, his composure shattering. "This is kidnapping." "No," Bear said calmly. "This is a citizen's arrest. We're just detaining you until the police arrive. And trust me, you're safer with the police than you are with us." At that moment, the sirens wailed in the distance. Not just one, but a dozen. Henderson panicked. He reached into his coat. He pulled out a snub-nosed revolver. "Back off. I'll shoot. I swear I'll shoot." Bear didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just stared at the gun. Then, at Henderson's shaking hand. "You pull that trigger, and you better hope you kill me. Because if I'm still standing, you're going to wish you were in that basement." The tension was razor-thin. Leo, peeking over the bar inside, felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He couldn't let Bear get hurt. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the counter and sprinted out the door. "No! Don't hurt him!" Leo screamed, rushing onto the porch, distracted by the boy. Henderson turned the gun toward Leo. "You little rat! You ruined everything." That split second of distraction was all Bear needed. He lunged. A massive fist connected with Henderson's jaw with the force of a sledgehammer. There was a sickening crunch, and Henderson crumbled to the ground, the gun skittering across the pavement. Tiny was on him in a second, zip-tying his hands behind his back. Bear stood over the unconscious man, shaking his hand out. He looked at Leo. "I told you to stay inside, kid." Leo was trembling. He had a gun. Bear knelt down and put a massive hand on Leo's shoulder. "Yeah, and you came out to save me. You got guts, kid. Stupid guts, but guts." The police arrived moments later. Usually, the Iron Guardians and the police didn't get along. But today, the narrative was different. Snake handed over the flash drive with the financial records. Doc handed over the medical files. Rocco handed over the video of Henderson pulling a gun and confessing. The police captain, a man who had known Bear for 20 years on opposite sides of the law, looked at the evidence, then at Henderson groaning on the ground. "Looks like he tripped," the captain said, looking at Henderson's swollen jaw. "Slippery when wet," Bear agreed. "We're raiding his house now," the captain said. "If the other kids are there, you boys did a good thing. Don't make a habit of it." As the police car hauled Henderson away, and the ambulance arrived to check on Leo, the sun finally began to break through the clouds. The resolution was swift. With the evidence the MC provided, Henderson's empire collapsed. The gorge of hope was shut down. The other 6 boys were rescued and placed in emergency care. The story hit the news, but the headline wasn't about a criminal biker gang. It was, "Local Heroes. Motorcycle Club exposes foster home abuse ring." But the story didn't end there for Leo. Technically, he was back in the system. The social workers wanted to place him in a new group home. But Leo refused to go. He clung to the gate of the Iron Guardians clubhouse. Bear walked out to meet the social worker, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins. "He needs a stable environment," Mrs. Higgins argued. "Not a clubhouse. He's got a job here," Bear said. "He's the best mechanic we've ever seen. We got a spare room. Doc will make sure he goes to school. Tiny will make sure he eats. And I'll make sure nobody ever hurts him again." Higgins looked at the terrifying men standing behind the gate, then at Leo, who was smiling for the first time in years, holding a wrench like it was a scepter. She sighed. "I can grant a provisional guardianship to a Mr. Theodore Bear Kowalski, assuming you pass a background check." Bear grinned. "My record's been clean for 10 years. Let's sign the papers." 5 years later, the garage bay of the Iron Guardians was buzzing. A custom chopper, painted a deep metallic blue, sat on the lift. It was a masterpiece of engineering. A young man, now 18, slid out from under the chassis. He was taller, stronger, his arms covered in grease. But the fear was gone from his eyes. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked up as Bear walked in. Bear's beard was grayer now, but he looked just as strong. "She ready, Leo?" Bear asked. "She's purring, Bear." Adjusted the timing, swapped the cam. "She'll outrun anything on the road." Bear patted the seat of the bike. "Good, because she's yours." Leo froze. "What?" "Happy 18th birthday, kid." Bear said, tossing him a set of keys. You earned it. You're not just the mechanic anymore. You're a guardian. Leo caught the keys. He looked at the bike, then at the man who had saved his life on a rainy night 5 years ago. He didn't say thank you. He didn't have to. He just pulled Bear into a hug. Let's ride, Leo said. As the garage door opened, revealing a sunny highway stretching out to the horizon, Leo fired up the engine. The sound was freedom. They rode out together, a brotherhood formed not by blood, but by loyalty and the choice to do the right thing when it mattered most. It just goes to show that you can never judge a book by its cover. The man in the suit might be the villain, and the man in the leather vest might be the hero. Real family isn't about where you come from. It's about who stands by you when the rain starts falling. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please don't forget to share this video with your friends. It helps us grow and tell more stories like Leo's. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode of Biker Stories. Thanks for watching, and keep your wheels on the road.